everyone, welcome back to the quest for the bestest. We're on our side quest right now because it is nearing close to being Oscars ceremony time. So that means we're taking a look at all of the Best Picture nominees for this calendar year, 2022. And today, we are looking at the newest film from Paul Thomas Anderson. Licorice Pizza came out, end of last year, kind of late December sometime.
December.
It made a little bit of a splash in the film bro circle, I will say, having been around that.
Having been a film bro at the time.
Okay, yes, during the time in the release window of this film, I maybe was a film bro. But I didn't go see it then. Now I got to see it for this film. And I want to hear what you guys thought about it also, because that's kind of the name of the game on this show, right? We share each other's opinions about the films that we watch, and we try to figure out where it goes on the list. We'll be taking a look at the list later, I think, to figure out where the Licorice Pizza ends up. But where did our film from last week end up? It's a simple answer. At place number 1, Drive My Car with an average score of 9.6. Very, very high. Not one score below 9.0 from all four of us. Puts it well at the top of this list. And should it win, pretty far up on the list of the rest of Best Pictures also. But if you catch the episode, we have some discussion about that as well. So I highly recommend heading back one episode in the past and checking out Drive My Car. Good movie. Better episode, I will say. Maybe?
Wow.
That would be one of our best episodes we've ever done, which I don't know if I quite, would put it on that level, but it was definitely very good. Great discussion.
I think after we wrap up this series, what we should do is, instead of watching movies, go back and watch our reviews and then rate them and then make a ranking of the Quest for the Bestest videos.
I see.
Could not have said it better myself.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of Licorice Pizza? Who wants to begin? Open up the floor to anyone.
I'll go for. Tucker, go ahead. You go ahead, Tucker.
I just want to start off because I don't really have too much to say about Licorice Pizza. I think it's a totally competent film. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, at least in my eyes, but it doesn't really have too much to say for itself, in my opinion. I think it has a couple fun characters, some fun character moments, but that's really all it's got its laurels resting on. And I'm interested to hear how we can sort of spin this into a more Questian conversation with themes and cinematics and character moments and stuff that I didn't really pick up too much on in Licorice Pizza. So I'm kind of surprised this got the huge amount of buzz it did, other than the fact that it's from a very well-established director whose other films I do think supersede this in terms of not only Oscar baitiness, but like scope and scale and stuff like that. This is a pretty simple film, and it's fun, it's light, but I don't know if it's much more than that.
Okay.
Fair point. I'll go next because Tucker, I think you have a point there. Paul Thomas Anderson is really known for making these epics, essentially, not necessarily like historical epics, but more recent historical epics. Maybe like a Boogie Nights or a Magnolia or something of that nature. Long movies like that. This one comes in at 2 hours 15, and all of Paul Thomas Anderson's
it's not
movies,
breaking the bank.
Exactly.
It's not breaking the watch.
All of his movies sort of tell these epic stories and sort of encapsulate a time period or something like that, and they focus through characters. And I think that still stays true to what Licorice Pizza is doing here. I haven't seen a lot of PTA films, but it's at the bottom of my list for him currently. But I still did quite enjoy this. I think that everyone's really funny in this. I think the film looks great. I think it captures the aesthetic of the time very, very well. It's just like a funky, like just a little funky groove of a film in a lot of ways. I think that's what Paul Thomas Anderson, he grew up in this era of Hollywood and in the San Fernando Valley. I'm not from California, never been there, don't really know.
It sounds right. I'll say with my Californian card that it is probably right.
And it feels very much like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like someone who has a lot of reverence for this time period and the movie industry and stuff like that surrounding it, that is making a time capsule film and capturing all that nostalgia. And I think it's quite enjoyable in that sense.
Abram, do you want to go next, or do you want to hand it off to me? Your choice.
You're trying to take too much power here. I was trying to cut in for that third position now in the recent episodes. I can't have it. I'm taking it for myself.
Hey man, I said it's your choice.
Here's my opinion. I think this is a dumb movie about nothing. But I also think it's fun to watch. Licorice Pizza is kind of interesting because first of all, I had to watch it in 2 sittings because I was getting a little bit bored of it, to be honest with you. And because I had to go do other stuff. I have poor time management. But I was watching the film when I was finishing it out, and I looked at the runtime, and I noticed I only had 15 minutes left, and that was perplexing to me. Not necessarily because the time was flying by, because it was, but mostly because I felt like we hadn't accomplished anything. I didn't know where we were going. It's a film that meanders intentionally so, but I also think annoyingly so.
Sure.
They're
fair.
really they're really great vignettes here, but I'm not pretentious enough to pretend that there's a lot going on here because I don't really think there is. I think it reminds me of when I watched the Wong Kar-wai movie that doesn't really make sense, Chungking Express.
Ah.
It's about characters. It's kind of non-linear. We're in the vibe. We're in the moment. But I really am hard pressed to find any sort of underpinning here in terms of theme, in terms of anything. It's a nice slice of life. It's a moment in time, and that's fun. But this is the 10th Best Picture slot. I don't know about that.
It wasn't the 10th. Like, if
enjoyable.
we're trying to rank them to see which one got in that just under the line, that was Nightmare Alley by a long shot.
Oh, yeah.
But this is up there in terms of critical acclaim and stuff. Like, this was widely predicted to be Best Picture nominee.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It feels very Under the Silver Lakey. If people have seen that movie.
Oh, man, that's
you
a great
probably
movie.
haven't.
Yikes.
That's a great movie.
That's a better movie than this, I think. But I don't know. I think this movie is fun and forgettable, frankly.
Well, Abram,
Timo?
I think you and I are largely in agreement because I just didn't get this movie. Like, I just didn't. I watched it and like I think I know what happened, but like I could not draw a line connecting any of the vignettes. And while I think that it's aesthetically quite pleasing and there's a little bit of a romance story in here, there's just there's nothing going on for me that just like drags me in and makes me invested in it. And the main characters and stuff they're fun enough, I think, to watch, but it didn't grab me as pretty much every other film on this listed. I felt myself really kind of being like, man, really would like to be doing something else right now while I was watching it, which is, it's horrible. It's horrible to say that about a movie, but I had that thought to myself. I must truthfully self-report. That really did happen. So I think that there's some good evaluations here in the technical work, but man, am I just like kind of bored and I just have to give in to being like, ooh, pretty shot. Oh, they're driving a truck backwards. Okay, cool. And like that's such like a low level of movie watching for me that it's not as enjoyable as something maybe with a little bit more plot, which oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think it's true.
I think this film is interesting because it in no way wants you to care about the overarching things. It wants you to say, hey, we're starting a scene. You got the idea of the scene. Go with it. Go with the flow. Adapt yourself to the situation. What scenario are these characters in? Are our two main characters having a fight? Are they friends again? Like, what is going on that is just in this moment? And I think there is an appeal to that, and I can certainly see why it would receive critical acclaim, why people would enjoy just the experience of watching. But I think my problem with this film is it is among the best of last year, according to critics, according to the Oscars ceremony, the Academy voters, which kind of feels out of place for me because when we're talking about the best films of the year, it's ones that resonate not only with the themes of the time, you know, something like Judas and the Black Messiah and Trial of the Chicago 7 last year, sort of having a mesh and also meeting with important themes and things that we can talk about and competent filmmaking, great characters. This film feels out of time because it is intentionally that, but it also feels out of place because of that. I'm like, well, what is it that makes this Best Picture worthy? And Tanner, maybe you're a little bit higher on it than the rest of us. And
I think so.
Do you have sort of an explanation
that.
for this?
What I was kind of thinking of while you were saying that, Tucker, is
Tanner,
that I think
defend
this film.
this movie.
I will. And it seems that's going to be the dynamic here. Is that I think I can relate this film. I don't know if any of you guys would disagree, especially if you've seen these movies, to like a Fast Times at Ridgemont High or a Dazed and Confused type of film. You know, these nostalgic looks at like young people coming of age, that kind of deal. And, those films are very highly regarded, and having watched both of them, they stood the test of time, and I really enjoy that. Those very simple coming-of-age stories. And I think that it's a similar thing here in Licorice Pizza. And I can understand that, neither of those movies were nominated for Best Picture because they were.
Therein lies the difference, yeah.
Yeah, therein lies the difference. But I think it's important that Licorice Pizza, we haven't really gotten a. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was the more recent one, and that one came out in 1982. And since then, I can't recall any hangout, coming of age, just fun movie that we've gotten. And this really harkens back to that sort of era and approaches it with a very adept directorial and writing hand from Paul Thomas Anderson. And I think that's why, it's nostalgic not only for Paul Thomas Anderson and people of his age looking back at 1972 or whenever this movie's set, but also nostalgic for maybe younger people who remember an era where films like this were the norm. So maybe that's why it garnered this acclaim from critics who might be older and remembering these times and remembering these films quite well. Which I will say, both Dazed and Confused, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Licorice Pizza, all about on the same level, all being very good.
I'm thinking about those movies because I've seen all those movies that you referenced, including some other ones that I think fit into this category of the high school coming of age that are more recent, like Superbad, I think falls into that category. Maybe even Booksmart does as a postmodern, very new film. But to me, I'm like, okay, so a lot of those films, especially Dazed and Confused, really work for me and work as this as these vignettes flowing together, leading to these different events. But this one, they all felt disconnected. They felt disconnected, like in their ideas and the central idea of what's going on. I felt like our main character, Greg's his name, right? I'm getting
Gary.
Gary.
Greg's his brother.
Greg's his brother.
Yeah,
okay, so
Greg's the
Gary
brother who gets
Valentine.
four lines of dialogue and doesn't matter
No.
to the plot, as do most of the side characters.
So Gary Valentine is always going off doing some crazy venture. And to me, those never had anything bridging them together. He would always go off, he did the waterbed business and then he moved on to the next thing. And it's I just don't feel like these are the logical progression of one thing into the next. Dazed and Confused doesn't really have a plot, but stuff moves along, mounting up to the climax. And in this film, I felt like the climax was a tense climax. It made me feel are they going to get out of it? But I didn't feel like it had the support of any of the stuff that came before it. It was just yet another isolated event, but the most exciting / tense one of the film. And so I was like, I don't feel any of the weight going on here. I'm like, okay, whoa, all right, here we are.
Yeah, that's my thing about it. This feels like a mood board. Like here's a bunch of things we're gonna put up, and that's sort of evocative visually and sonically, and it has a distinct feel. And I think the feel is what ties the film together. But my problem is, I don't understand, as Timo was saying, how these events build on each other. So I'll give an example of what I think is the funniest and most emblematic vignette in the film, which is when Bradley Cooper shows up.
Yeah.
And he is fucking hysterical. But his dialogue really doesn't make sense. This is basically an event that we slot into the narrative that doesn't really develop the characters beyond the sort of will they, won't they tension between underage Gary and overage Elena, which you should probably talk about. Alana, whatever. Which
That's her actual name as well. It's the actual name of the actress.
True.
But it's a fun moment. But why is it there? What are we supposed to gain? Why is this a sequence of events? Because you can sort of, in a transitive sense, link together disparate scenes thematically, sort of progress characters across these unrelated moments. But I just don't think this film does that. It becomes sort of like, hey, here's the part with Sean Penn, and then here's the part with Bradley Cooper, and then here's the part with Benny Safdie. Yep. And they're all fun. But what am I supposed to learn about the main characters because of these? Where are we going on our way through these vignettes? I just think that that's the problem. What is the subtextual level that links them together? Because I can't find one.
Tucker?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that the subtextual level is essentially non-existent. I think intentionally so. And I don't necessarily think that that's inherently a bad thing, though it's something that I certainly had an issue with in this film. I just kept reaching for it and grabbing air, a raccoon dipping the cotton candy in water and just where'd it go? But I think what this film goes for is just about the shallowest two character interaction development that you can possibly get, and it's a normal friendship, and I think, well, hold on, let me run that back. It is not a normal friendship.
Tucker, what kind of friends do you have?
Yikes! It is a friendship that they meet, they get to know each other, and then they have fights, and they are friends, and they have fights, and they're friends. But really, the only change between the two of them is they don't know each other. 2 minutes into the film, they know each other. And then, woo, 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 we're just going on a pretty much a flat line for the rest of the film. And I think the fact that we don't get, like, build-ups and tensions of they're fighting and this is why that they're suddenly friends again and this is why that this fight is starting. Like, there are ideas of that, but I feel like I'm always ready for there to be, like, a twist. Ready for them to, like, push the button and be like, no, this is where this is leading to. And that button is never pushed. Which is, I think, is what you're talking about, Abrams. Like, where are we going with this? Why do these moments really change them?
Well, here's the thing, because that's really the coming of age thing. You know, these are all formative experiences for these characters. And I think you know, Tucker, you made the little woo 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 because this movie is really a sine wave of the ups and downs and how Gary and Alana sort of understand each other as people.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it is a coming of age story for the both of them. And I think there are different points in the film which the vignettes serve, like Abram brought up the Bradley Cooper section, and he asks, what purpose does this scene serve? And I think ultimately, after you get some fun antics and a tense scene of Alana being a super cool badass and driving that truck all the way down the hill backwards, it leads to an important turning point in her character, which is really coming to realize the immaturity of Gary. That she, because as an audience,
Does that not happen before that?
No, it's right, because she backs all the way down the truck. You know, they stop in the middle of the road, and she's sitting on the side of the road with her head in her hands.
You're right.
And she looks up the hill to see the silhouette of Gary and his stupid 15-year-old friends pretending to have sex with each other with gas can penises.
Yeah. Great scene.
And she's like,
great shot.
Yeah, like, I've gotten sort of swept up in Gary Valentine's personality. He's a fast talking, you know, he's always got scams and schemes going on. But he is a 15-year-old kid. And that's when Alana realizes that. And that's when, you know, immediately after that, she goes to work for Benny Safdie.
I concede. That is a logical progression. I agree with you. Thank you for elucidating.
So go for it. Sorry, Abram.
But, like, it doesn't matter. This is kind of my problem. It doesn't matter because she just loves him anyway. And, like, if we're talking about a coming-of-age narrative, I feel like you should be able to, in some sense, resonate with the coming-of-age that happens. But this kid is just selling water beds, now he's selling pinball tables, and now he's, like, moving shit in big trucks. Like, I understand how we can sort of provoke character reactions out of these scenes and maybe push on a character arc, but what does that really accomplish in the end? I guess it's kind of my problem. Gary never really has to reconcile his lifestyle, and he's never really asked to either by Alana.
Yeah, I mean that is a thing about the ending of the film, you know, where ultimately, and this is the we should probably, as you said, Abram, we should probably talk about the age gap thing, because the film brings it up a number of times, and it has sort of dominated the conversation around Licorice Pizza as well. But that's where the film ends, is that they are together again. They Alana has sort of. I assume she's going to leave her job at Joel Wax, the guy who's running for mayor, Benny Safdie.
Yeah, Benny Safdie.
She can leave her job there. Gary's probably going to continue running the pinball business, and the sine wave is going to continue. And I think that's maybe the point that Paul Thomas Anderson wants to leave us on, is that the relationship is volatile and nothing is really fixed, and they're just going to sort of stay in this loop until something happens. You know, it's a continual coming of age sort of deal. And I can understand that can be, you know, not narratively pleasing for some audiences, but I think it's a justifiable ending for the film nonetheless. It matches with the idea that Anderson is going for in the whole film, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, shall we do it? Shall we talk about the age gap? I could throw my hat in the ring about it. To me, I'm like, okay,
It's bad. 15-year-olds and 25-year-olds shouldn't date. I'm going to say it up top. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that.
They shouldn't date. They shouldn't date. I don't think that. I think that violates the half your age plus 7 or however it goes rule.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's just like, I wish they would stop bringing it up. They bring it up too much in the movie. It's like either it's like here in the beginning and you just kind of like, ooh, like shove it away and you just are like, okay, they look sort of the same age, like they don't look too terribly different, but like why do they have to keep bringing it up? I just wish if they either just wrote it out. I don't know. I just because like the story, their characters don't work if they're not this, but why? I don't know. I don't know how fully I've grappled with it. Besides, this, like, ugh.
Well, all right.
It's interesting. I think that's why the movie is interesting at all to me. I think it is these two different but similar in a way characters that meet and have a connection. And personally, I'm not pro underage dating. I'm not suggesting that should be a thing, but I am in my mind thinking this does make for an interesting story. It makes for an interesting set of character dynamics, and I like their bond together. They have a very believable friendship, even if it does border on creepy in some ways. But you can understand that they're both immature and mature in certain ways, and he's certainly quote unquote wise beyond his years because what other 15-year-old guy do you know that's doing this? And she has a lot of insecurities that she's able to sort of make up for by projecting onto Gary. Like the way that they develop together, I think is genuinely great and very interesting and what kept me compelled through the course of the movie. So I don't care that they age gap it. I think it's an interesting story concept, but I do agree with Timo. I'm sitting there at the beginning of the movie and I'm like, yeah, fine. Okay. I can get on board with this. I just want to see how the characters develop. But then like every 20 minutes on the dot, they're like, oh yeah, do you remember that Gary's 15? Oh yeah, we're not supposed to be like having a romantic relationship. And the fact that they keep just like poking you with that, it's like, come on, man. Like, just let it exist, frankly.
If I may, I think it's important to continue, because the character, namely Alana, is reminded of it because that is her, like, she knows that she shouldn't be romantically involved with Gary, which she is. And she sort of uses this, like, business partner facade to cover it up, because she is insecure. That's like her whole deal. She's insecure, but she's 25 years old. She doesn't have a stable job, and she's still trying to be cool. And that's why she glums onto Gary, because Gary has this facade of being cool and a fast talking guy.
Let's throw the roll. Gary Valentine is a cool guy. He is just up there getting shit done, moving stuff. He's a cool guy.
The thing is, like, why is Gary doing that is the thing.
Sure.
Is that he's putting on this facade of, he's going to be a down and out former child actor is this guy's trajectory. And he's just like prolonging that with these short-lived schemes and stuff like that. And it is a facade of being cool, which Alana glums onto, and she knows she shouldn't because he's 15. And that's the sort of thing, and her continual reminder that he is 15 and she is 25. I think that is why that reminder remains.
I think though that the film doesn't treat our two main characters very equally in terms of like the amount that it gives us to think about. For me, I was just unimpressed by Gary's character. There just wasn't that much there to really talk about, and the film didn't present very much information about him, about how he is. What does Gary think about all these schemes that he's doing? He just does the schemes, and we never get any moments where I feel like we learn about him as a character. And so, but we get to see bits of Alana's home life, and we get to see how she's around when Gary's not there. And I think that the film, even though it's like starts focused on Gary, it quickly sidesteps that and goes down this route of following and focusing on Alana as a character, and as a result, she's much more interesting, and I care a lot more about her. So but then like she's still like, oh, I love you, Gary, at the end, and I'm like, but like I've been given no reason to believe that this guy is interesting or there's any merit to him at all, because I don't know anything about him besides from what like the very surface level stuff that we're shown on the film. And I think that maybe you could say that, well, that's the point. He's supposed to be like an empty, vapid character. But if that's the case, I would have at least like that to be demonstrated within the film. The film show that to me at least some way. I think there are definitely ways that you can write the characters that like proclaim their vapidity, I guess, through actions and that kind of stuff, rather than it being like me having to just like be like, oh, okay, they're just nothing in there. So
Abram.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so here's my opinion on this whole age gap thing, because I think the age gap really is central to their relationship, and their relationship is central to how they develop as characters and why Alana is interesting. Frankly, I agree, she's way more interesting than Gary. But here's the thing: I don't care I mean, Alana is a pedophile in the movie. She just is. And I think that makes the movie interesting. I agree with Tucker. I don't look to my movies for moral guidance. Frankly, I find probably the more immoral and narrative
Except for Gigi.
Of course, as we know.
I think
Everyone go watch the Gigi review if you have not yet.
The more immoral and narrative you're telling, the more room you open up for a good writer to explore these topics, which are just never going to be explored in real life, right?
Yeah.
My problem with this movie is that one of my many problems with the movie is that the age gap. Paul Thomas Anderson has nothing to say about the fact that they are 10 years apart. It's used as a way to reflect a lot of issues that Alana has in her life, but those can be accomplished without them having a romantic sexual interest in each other. Like, what is the point of this? I think about the film that was snubbed for Best Picture back when it released in, I believe, 2014, Transformers: Age of Extinction.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And there's a subplot. There's a subplot.
Jesus Christ.
So continue. I know where you're going with this, but continue.
Right. There's a subplot there where Mark Wahlberg's daughter is a minor and her boyfriend is an adult, and he carries around in his wallet a laminated copy of the Romeo and Juliet Law.
And Texas Boys, you have to answer for this, by the way, because the film takes place in Texas.
Oh yeah, this is right. This exists.
Frankly, I think that has about the same level of plot relevance and thematic unpacking as the age gap in Licorice Pizza. Because
well,
no, seriously, can somebody tell me what this movie has to say about their age gap?
Yeah.
I don't think you can find anything. And again, I understand how it reflects their characters, but Alana worked as like a life touch photographer. She could just strike up a friendship with kids at a high school and realize that her life is going nowhere and she needs to change without accosting a 15-year-old boy and showing him her tits and then running out of the house. The movie has nothing to say about this, and I think that is a really weird facet of this entire conversation.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say, I think that's what I was trying to get at earlier. Not the fact that they continue to bring it up. That is inherently the problem, because of course it exists. It's an issue for Alana. But the fact that each time that they bring it up, it's the same thing of bringing it up. It's like, hey, remember, Gary's 15, and you shouldn't be in this relationship. And she's like, yeah, that's right. But then she keeps doing it anyway. The fact that it isn't different permutations of that necessarily, it doesn't delve deeper into that as we go. She doesn't reflect more and more as we go. She does to a certain degree, but not enough to make it like super substantive. But the fact that it's just like a continual poke of, yep, remember, ding ding, this is thing, and you should keep it in your mind.
Well, I think I might be covering the same ground here, but I think it's what it's saying is about either of these characters' maturity and the coming of age of them. Because, Alana is immature in the way of she's 25, she flips out on people, she's temperamental, she flips out on her family for her perceived, she flips out on them because she is projecting onto them her own inadequacies. Right? Because she yells at her sisters after that dinner scene that, oh, you think I'm a loser because I don't have a job or whatever, and you have it all figured out, even though you work for mom and dad and everything. She's immature in that sense, and she seeks validation, shallow validation from these stunted man children like Sean Penn's character and is there another one? No, the one after that is Bradley Cooper, which she doesn't really have an interest in, and Benny Safdie, who's more mature, but she ultimately realizes that she'd rather settle for Gary than go for someone who kind of has his life figured out. Also because, as we find out, Benny Safdie is gay, so that's not really an option for her. But yeah, I think it serves the purpose of highlighting the maturity of both of these characters, the maturity levels of both of these characters. Because at the same time, Gary is immature because he, like I said, I feel like I'm covering the same ground here. Is that he's putting on this facade of cool because his mother is almost never present, and he's sort of left to his own devices to try and figure out how to be successful. He was exposed to like industry that breeds like you have to be successful all the time at a very young age, and he's about to age out of all of these child acting roles. So he's trying to find a way to seem more mature and be fast talking and be cool and things like that. So I think that is the ultimate purpose of the age gap, is that it is an avenue not only to it's an avenue, like I've been saying, it's just an avenue to discuss the maturity and the coming of age storyline.
I agree with you, Tanner. What I come back to is I just don't think that needed to be a romantic component to that relationship.
Yeah,
in order
that's
to,
what he was saying.
To communicate that theme, because I think about this. If they're in a romantic relationship here, when there's that big of an age gap, there's a power imbalance. And I think what becomes interesting at very particular points in the film is the way in which Alana's an adult, right? She holds the power over him. She not only in a physical sense of, oh, I can take you out to New York to go to the to go to your press junket, but also just like she's the adult, right?
Yeah.
She knows things. Like when the news is happening, she's like, "You don't know about this war and stuff." And he's like,
right.
I'm literally in 7th grade or whatever.
But and then the film gets interesting because Tanner, I think you're right about this sort of ethos that Gary tries to adapt. And there's points in the film where even though he is a minor, 10 years her younger, he has power over her, and she has to do very childish things to try to get him back. Like there's that shot when she is in the restaurant with Sean Penn, and she's making eyes with Gary and like sticking out his tongue at her, and it's like, You're 25. He's 15. What?
Yeah.
So there are like specific moments where there's this inversion of this like fucked up, illegal like sexual power dynamic here. But the film, that is the only time that I think the film actually does something of use with its age gap, particularly as it relates to the romantic relationship they have. But even that is a lot of projection on my behalf, looking for things we could pull out of there to derive meaning. But ultimately. Yeah. Again, they could have just been friends. She could have just worked platonically at Gary's waterbed business and come to the same sort of character revelations about herself.
Yeah,
but the movie does not interrogate the romantic element of this, which I think that you need to do if you're going to have a pedophilic relationship in your movie.
I think that...
Yeah, I can sorry, Timo. I was going to say, I think it's... Yeah, it's pretty clear that PTA is taking a sort of neutral stance on these sort of things. He's like we said up top, I think, or I think it was you, Abram, who said, Paul Thomas Anderson knows that the audience doesn't need him to tell you that the relationship is bad. So instead of taking a condemnatory thing and making the negative of it forefronted, he takes more of a neutral stance and operates on your understanding that this is bad. And as we've discussed already, Alana knows this is bad as well, but she's stuck in this sine wave of the coming of age sort of narrative, which we've talked about as well.
What I was gonna say before Tanner walked all over my little thought.
my bad.
You're good. Was that I think that we're all describing how these characters are, and we're investigating who they are and what's going on between them in their relationship. But to me, I want the next step. What does that mean? What does that mean as a film like by Paul Thomas Anderson? Are these supposed to be characters that he knew? Are these just fake characters made up? Are these like emblematic and representative of something in the world? There's this thematic discussion of this age gap, which I think is probably maybe the most salient thematic idea in the film. I don't think that there's a lot else.
Certainly the most core one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not a lot else to grab onto, but even that to me is rather shallow because it's just narrow. It's just dealing with them. There's no way to apply this, I feel like, to anything greater in the world. And to me, when I'm thinking about best pictures, that should really be an aspect of the film, an aspect of the theme that you can take it to the next level and be like, oh, okay, there's some implication that I can think of in my life, or that maybe I've seen in some other film, or I can think about society at large. The film kind of has it has this little narrative with the oil crisis, and they're not being, but it's just plot ramifications. There's no thematic relevance to any of that. And so I'm stuck wanting a little more from these themes, even though, I can agree that I see them. Didn't really pick up on them while I was watching the film for the first time. I was like, yeah, okay. So it's like, if only there was a little bit more to grab onto thematically beyond just how these characters are and how they interact.
Yeah. I think the reason that it feels kind of limiting in its scope is because, let's be real, the only developed characters are our two main characters. We have funny side characters. I think Benny Safdie is the closest that we get to another developed character with an actual character problem and stuff. But everyone else are just bit parts. Even the characters that are there from the beginning to the end of the movie, which is Gary's squad of goons who are just around him to carry his shit and say something about weed or whatever. I think the problem is that not only that these characters and their dynamic isn't developed on a thematic level, but is that there aren't developed other side characters for them to talk to about their problems and you to relate throughout the film of, okay, so this is how your dynamic is changing because of this relationship. This is what's impacting you on the outside. This is what this person thinks of this. It's kind of just one-off things, little sparkles across the film that I think end up having it feel a little bit shallow. If there were one of Gary's friends and maybe one of Alana's parents or one of Alana's sisters that were core to the film, and we had a lot more scenes with them and we knew what that character was like and what they thought about this relationship, then even if it didn't develop on a thematic level, we would have a greater understanding of the importance of this relationship within the context of the world. As it exists, and people say, that's bad, or hey, you guys are cute together or whatever, but that's just about it. That's the base level. And I think I'm someone who enjoys a good, tight character study, but this movie doesn't exist in that kind of vacuum. They aren't the only people interacting with each other. They have lives of their own. They've got friends, they've got family members, all sorts of people coming and going, but they're never touched upon. And I think that's a little bit unfortunate when there could be great conversations. There could be great character development from side characters that we just never get.
Yeah. Tucker, thank you for bringing up Alana's parents and family, because I get to do my first little trivia segment here. I got a lot of trivia for this movie, by the way.
Good.
So we're gonna see how much we can get through. But as some keen-eyed or just general pop culture knowledge having viewers may know, Alana's family is the Haim family. Alana Haim being the main character, and her family, her sisters play her sisters, and her parents play her parents. All of them unprofessional actors, obviously. Her father, Modi Haim, apparently improvised most of his lines, and the what the fuck moment when she comes home in her bikini from the waterbed sale or whatever was apparently improv and done on the first take. So that's just a little fun thing there.
Okay,
I think
improv, but yeah, that's what a dad would say. It's not clever that he says "what the fuck." So I don't think putting the improv bit on it
got a chuckle out of me.
It's a funny moment, sure, but I don't know.
He was naturally funny on the first take and made something up that was funny.
The phrase "what the fuck." He made that up.
Well, he said it in a certain way, if you remember.
It's called acting, Tucker.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're aware of it.
No.
Saying things that are typically said, but in a special way that makes it memorable.
Thank you for the definition.
Yeah.
I thought that the credits were unto a part of the movie on their set. As they should. You got to watch them. At least the parts with all the characters. That almost felt like the bookend to the film to me. Watching these little vignettes that not really anything's going on, but to me I was like, oh, okay, this is how this character ended up. And yet none of them said anything. I think it's cool that Alana Haim's family is her family. It makes it look very, realistic. Makes it look like they really are all siblings and related. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
They're not very
There's
developed characters.
There is a lot of instances. In fact, a good portion of this trivia is just like PTA casted this famous person or this person that he's like related to or friends with in the role. So if I may, and this might inspire us to remember a few moments and talk about some different things as well. Leonardo DiCaprio's father, George DiCaprio, is the water mattress salesman. You remember that guy? He's like, "Hey, this is the new cool thing." Daddy,
Oh,
you
yeah,
gotta
that guy.
yeah.
Oh, the hippie guy.
The hippie guy, yeah, the waterbed salesman.
Yeah.
What else we got? Obviously, John C. Reilly shows up for like 3 seconds as Herman Munster at the teenage fair or whatever. What else we got? His mother-in-law. That's what it would be. His mother-in-law, Kimiko, is actually the inspiration for the 2 Japanese wives of the restaurant owner, and she sort of relates some of her. She shared some of her experiences with racism, which contributed to that aspect of the film, that like C or D plot line, if you want to call it that. But she was actually present.
That's like an M plot line.
Yeah, she was present at the restaurant scene alongside her husband and her grandchildren. By the way, her husband being Maya Rudolph's father. So Paul Thomas Anderson and Maya Rudolph married. That's a little interesting thing. So PTA's kids were in that restaurant scene. Steven Spielberg's daughter is the girl in the bathroom who talks about that
Frisbee.
Gary's always trying to... Oh, yeah, Frisbee.
Her name's Frisbee. That's the character's name.
Yeah,
I was just elucidating.
That Gary's always trying to get hand jobs from her or whatever. What else we got here? The radio station guy, the guy that he does like the ads or whatever.
I was like, I'm that guy. He's like,
Yeah.
he's just like me. That's what I said when he came on.
Yeah.
Just like me, for real.
He is Danielle Haim's boyfriend and also produces some of Haim's albums. So, yeah, this movie is just kind of like nepotism, the movie, in a lot of ways. Just a lot of side characters.
I felt like it
that.
was advertised as having a lot of famous fellas in it, but it didn't really feel like it had a lot of famous fellas in it while I was watching it. I mean, like I was like, oh yeah, that's Bradley Cooper, and then after a while of looking at candidate walks, I was like, oh yeah, I suppose that's Benny Safdie too. But those are like
uncut gems.
I was like, yeah, really, I was. Those are the only 2 that I noticed that I was like, oh,
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the trailer and being like, dang, there's a lot of famous people in this movie. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what happened with that.
Well, I think the thing is that this movie was sold on it being PTA's movie, Hollywood, all these actors, that kind of stuff. But in reality, the film is about Alana Haim and Cooper
Hoffman.
Hoffman. Yeah, I knew that. Cooper Hoffman. And the 2 of them are probably going to be famous. I mean, they're both very good in this movie, and this is their first film role each. That's impressive. I mean, that's going to kickstart their career. They're going to be famous. So regardless, looking back, this film is going to have a stacked cast, even if the main players are not famous now. They certainly will be.
Yeah. Well, Alana Haim is famous for being in the band Haim, so...
Yeah, but that would require me knowing music stuff, which I don't.
That's fair. But the audience might.
I hope someone in the audience appreciated my Cooper Sharp cheese joke also.
Oh, and also Cooper Hoffman is tangentially famous because his father is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's what I have to say.
What do you
it's time
have
for me
to say, Abram? Say,
it's time for me to
speak
say
your
something.
truth right now.
I liked your comparison to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tanner, because I feel like a lot of these bit parts very much feel like it's Al Pacino, right, who shows up to talk with DiCaprio about bounty law or whatever, right, in Once Upon a Time, but in my opinion, the cameos in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and the sort of lens of reality and fiction and filmmaking blending together there had more of a purpose. Here it feels pretty purposeless. Ultimately, like the scene with Sean Penn is funny because it's Sean Penn and he's like jumping a motorcycle in the middle of a field for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes back to. Like as you're reading out this laundry list of people in addition to the 3 very overt Hollywood things, it reminds me of like, yeah, so this is why the movie is garnering acclaim, right? I actually think that it's our 2 leads that really steal the show, frankly. I think that they both turn in very good performances and they're very charismatic. The other stuff just feels like fluff for the most part, even though Bradley Cooper, again, so funny when he threatens to make a flamethrower and burn that guy alive at the gas pump.
Oh yeah.
It is so.
How big's your penis hole? Can you imagine how much it would hurt if I shoved that excuse up there?
There is no sense of place or realism or anything to anything Bradley Cooper does, and it's funny. But again, it's like, yeah, it's Bradley Cooper. That's the joke. That's why this is entertaining. And it'd be less entertaining if the same thing was delivered by just somebody we didn't know. And I guess it just ends up ringing hollow for me. I think a lot of these celebrity components ring hollow, even if it is funny to see him like throw a trash can through a window and then start trying to pick up some tennis women. Like,
you guys like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
yeah, it's funny, but it's just Bradley Cooper. He's there because you could have Bradley Cooper on the fucking poster. I don't know. It feels empty.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's my assessment too. Tanner, what do you got to say?
I just want to bring up some of those moments that are really fun. You know, our celebrity cameo moments bring about the greatest comedy in this, I think. I mean, you have the Sean Penn and Tom Waits as the classic character Rex Blau and Jack Holden, the director actor duo, who are apparently based on Sam Peckinpah and William Holden. The real life director and actor.
The William Holden. I was like, Holden. That's a famous Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, Sam Peckinpah did actually do like a motorcycle jump randomly in the middle of like a golf course somewhere. So that's based on real events, supposedly, allegedly. But that moment was just great, and all those moments are great. I think it also points. That moment also has my favorite shot in the whole movie, which is Tom Waits coming through that like the billow of cigarette smoke just kind of hanging in the air. And he comes through it, and he's drunk, and he's got a cigarette hanging out the corner of his mouth. He's like, Jack, you son of a bitch, or whatever, you golden, inexpensive, stupid son of a bitch. I love Tom Waits' voice, and any moment that he's speaking is golden, because I just love how he sounds. But yeah, we talked about the Bradley Cooper thing, which is fantastic. I think that, because Benny Safdie is our last little vignette, or am I forgetting one?
I think you're right. I think he is the last one.
Yeah, because we get Sean Penn, we get Bradley Cooper, then Benny Safdie. And that takes us up to the end of the film.
A question for you, Tanner.
Yes.
Is the we learned that the guy in the 12 shirt is actually presumably a reporter who is trying to get dirt on Benny Safdie's relationship.
Right.
But was that just like a Taxi Driver reference?
I don't know. I don't know, actually.
Like
it felt Taxi Driver-esque, didn't it?
The whole setup was just out of Taxi Driver.
Yeah, because like Alana looking out the window and seeing the creepy guy hanging out across the street, that's just straight out of Taxi Driver.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. Wow. Oh, I thought that felt familiar, but it's just now clicking for me.
Yeah, and like she's working for like a political candidate and stuff like that. Yeah. Do you guys? I guess I should ask. Do you guys have any favorite moments of the film? Joke-wise, comedic-wise, or otherwise?
None that are coming to mind right now.
What about the talent agent? I also love that. The talent agent scene.
Just say yes to everything.
Say yes to everything.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
He's like, you're a fucking fighter, aren't you? You're a fucking fighter.
Oh, she was great. She was great.
Yeah.
I think this movie is funny, but I think it's kind of just funny in the moment unless you're remembering Bradley Cooper, because a lot of it kind of has just faded into the background, and I was giggling and smiling throughout, but it kind of just sort of reached a low hum of comedy, or a hum of comedy. It was a low hum. It was a solid hum of comedy. Throughout the whole thing, that kind of just left it on a small chuckle. Like that's kind of what this movie operates on for me.
Yeah, I mean, Abram, go ahead. I was going to divert from the comedy to something new.
Well, because to the point about the comedy, I do think the movie is funny. I think that's one of the things that was pulling it through. There is a wit to the movie, which it's an eclectic wit, which I appreciate. When I agree, that talent agency scene is great because that camera gets real close to that woman's face, and she is just the film really does not care about constructing a sense of believability to really anything that happens. And I think that there is a charm in that. And there is, I think, a mastery in like immersing me in these scenes that why is this happening? Who is going to act like this? Sure, maybe you can say that Bradley Cooper is on acid or something, right? Because he's famous, right? But what's this talent agency lady doing? It's just comedic. And again, it contributes to why I think this movie operates on two very different levels of quality. As just an enjoyable narrative, I think it's fun. I think it's got a spirit and aesthetic kind of like The Nice Guys or something, even though The Nice Guys is an astronomically better film, in my opinion.
That's fair point.
But like, none of these things feed into anything deeper. So I do think it is funny. I like the talent agency scene a lot. I think Bradley Cooper, again, steals the show in terms of the comedy, even though I think that the main two leads are able to hold more. Bradley Cooper exists kind of just like on that shock value of what is he doing?
He's volatile, and he can't stick around for a long time. The brightest stars die the soonest, or whatever the saying is.
I was thinking, like, man, wouldn't it be funny if Bradley Cooper was here for the entire movie, and then by the time we got to the scene, like, on the street, I'm like, no, it actually would not be. I think he's used sparingly and appropriately, so the humor works for me, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to move on briefly to the aesthetics of the film because I think that while the other parts don't really hit for me, this film is beautiful and it's really well constructed. I think that all the filmmaking fundamentals of it are great. I love the way the camera moves and the way that all the frames. It's just that beautiful 70s color. You get some amazing LA lens flares. Just like it looks like a 70s film. And so I was like, okay, I'm into that. I think that just the visuals of it are very beautiful and enough to make me keep looking at it. Maybe not enough to make me pay attention, but I watched the film.
Yeah, I also love the look of this film. Like you said, the lens flares and stuff like that. Just the production design and how they capture like 1970s LA, and the costumes are all fantastic. Going back to like the actual cinematography and direction, I love the shot of the golf course. There's just like a thick layer of mist over the entire thing, and and the great shot, like the great parallels of Gary like sprinting across to go to Alana when she fell off the back of the motorcycle, and then Sean Penn like standing up on it, and he's like, "I'm coming, Nancy," and then it's cutting back and forth and like cross paths. I think it's there's a lot of stuff like that is very clearly coming from a very experienced director who knows how to make things look good and has a lot of care for capturing a certain feel and aesthetic of the time.
Yeah, don't disagree at all. I mean, I have nothing more to add, frankly. You're right. Looks good. It's good music, good costume.
I honestly don't have much more to add about this movie in general.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think I'm running out of steam personally.
But what did the nominations?
What the nominations?
The noms.
There's not many. There's three, including Best Picture. It was also nominated. PTA got nominated for Best Director. He also got nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
Oh, okay. So
there you have it.
None of the awards, the parts of the movie that I liked, huh?
No. I mean, I think maybe closest is PTA's direction, because I think he's very good at wrangling the aesthetic and having a very clear vision for this film, which I think is maybe one of its strongest suits.
It's clearly directed. It is, it doesn't feel like it doesn't know what it's doing, but I just disagree with what it's doing. Yeah. Should we give it a score and then figure out where it goes on the list? I'm kind of feeling like giving it a score right now.
I'm ready to score it.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
What am I going to give this movie? I think I know what I'm going to give it. I'm punching it in. Do you guys have yours pulled up? Have it ready to put in?
I do.
I have put in a number. Wouldn't it be funny if Paul Thomas Anderson directed a movie called PTA? I mean, Parent Teacher Association.
Good joke.
I knew what you were going for.
Awesome joke, man. All right, let's find out what this score is in 3, 2, 1. Ah, boop. Okay.
Wow.
And we
nice
have a
spread there, boys.
We have a number. It's 6.8. So that is going to put it in the 7th spot. One above Don't Look Up at nearly the bottom of the list. The point breakdown, starting from the top, Tanner gave it an 8.5. I gave it a 7.0. Tucker gave it a 6.5, and Abram gave it a 5.2. So fairly, 8.5 to 5.2 is nearly almost 3 whole points of difference there. So, wow, we weren't super unison, even though I feel like a lot of our talking points.
This is the widest spread I think we've had in a while,
Yeah.
Yeah. If
But,
I may
but
give,
honestly, not a particularly contentious fight, but I think we all shared our opinions on this, and we're like, yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah.
here's the thing. If I can do my closing thoughts, I felt like I was playing defense for a lot of this. I don't know if I got to share a lot of my thoughts, which is fine. The defense therein lies my thoughts on it as well. I was sharing my opinion against the opinions of all of youses. And I'm not saying that you guys hate the movie, because clearly you don't. You think it's like pretty good or average at best, stuff like that. But I think that because I feel like a common criticism among you guys was that it's just kind of like a hangout whatever kind of film. Am I not far off there?
Yeah, I think you're not far off with that.
Which I would like to clarify is not inherently a bad thing, and I'll enjoy those plenty. But I think it doesn't feel right to me in the context of best film of the year, best script of the year, because, okay, where's the screenplay going? I have no fucking clue. Like, there are questions about this that sort of lower it from the Oscars Best Picture nomination territory. That I think is why I'm contentious about it.
Yeah.
If I were reviewing this in any other context, I'd probably give it a 7.5 or something like that. But it's a little lower on Quest.
Because therein lies my point, is that I think I've kind of realized that the thing of like judging it as against like other best pictures and how best picture-y is it is maybe sort of reductive for me, myself, and I, is that, well, what does it mean to be a best picture? Can't a best picture really be anything? In fact, wouldn't I have had a lot of fun if Fast Times at Ridgemont High won Best Picture? I would have, and I really would have enjoyed that, because I think judging it on its own merits, it's very good at what it's seeking to accomplish, and I had a very good time with it.
Wow, Tanner's getting very philosophical about the true meaning of the quest for the bestest.
Best Picture.
What I would say about this matter is that until we get to the end of this month and Dune wins Best Picture, none of the movies we watch for Quest are like anywhere near my top 25 favorite films of all time.
Fair enough.
Except for maybe The Godfather. So when I think about this, I'm not really. I do feel that it is out of place in comparison to the films I watch for this show, but I also just think it's meandering and not very interesting for my general baseline enjoyment level.
Sure.
I do expect more out of a film we watch for Quest, but out of any film I watch, I expect a little bit more of a deft hand in the character department, in the thematics department. And so while I think the middle ground I share with you, Tanner, is that the movie is fun, I do find large swaths of the movie to be fun, even though I did have to break it up. I just felt like no matter when I'm watching a movie, I want there to be something underneath it that I'm going to remember or think about. And frankly, I don't think I'm going to remember or think about much of this film outside of the fact that Bradley Cooper was going to torch a man alive in the middle of an oil embargo. And like, that's not really what I was hoping to walk away from the movie with. So
Fair enough.
It's okay. It's enjoyable, but forgettable, I think.
I think that statement right there sums up my thoughts entirely, Abram. I enjoyed it while I was watching it for the most part. I think had I gone and seen it in the theater, it might have been a little bit more engaging. You sit in the theater and like, I have nothing else to do but watch this movie right now. Whereas at home, I'm like, man, I could go do something else. I could like study for some homework right now.
Ooh.
Or,
Yucko.
So I was like,
That's a bad part of our review right there. If you're like, hey, I really wish I could go do homework right now.
That's maybe the most damning thing that's ever been said on the show.
well,
You said some pretty damning things about From Here to Eternity, though. Let's not.
That was a
Okay.
long time ago. I don't even know if that was a different guy entirely.
I think that Licorice Pizza was just fun enough while I was watching it, but I'm really not going to think about it very much going forward in the future at all.
Sure. Fair
Tanner?
enough.
Tanner,
Yes.
what film are we watching next week? Tell us,
Well,
please.
Speaking
I'm
of
dying to
mid
know.
and forgettable, we have... No, I'm just joking, of course. We have a movie that we've already reviewed as a quadruple here on BLB. We are doing Denis Villeneuve's Dune next as our penultimate entry into the 2022 Best Picture nominees side quest. Dune.
That's right. We are going to visit Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Abram, you look positively chuffed about this.
I went on Letterboxd for the first time in like 19 years to actually update a list, which was to put Dune at my sixth favorite spot, my sixth favorite film of all time. I'll be doing my fourth viewing of Dune for this recording of Quest. I've got it on 4K Blu-ray now. I'm gonna have my dad's surround sound in my home basement shaking my ass as we look out over the dunes and
Can you film it?
I can't wait.
Yeah,
That's what the drums sound like, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. If you want to get a sneak peek at what our Dune thoughts are, or refresh yourself on what we think about Dune before we revisit it in a Best Picture context, go check out the Backlot Banter episode from way back when the film came out. It's got us talking about it, and we could share our. You can get a hint of our thoughts, but will they remain the same? I don't know. Will I think the same of this film later, watching it at a different time? Who's to say? I think that's kind of the beauty of
what will
giving
the
it-
desert power be?
What will the desert? Oh, dude, desert power. Yes, desert power. We're gonna talk about that and all kinds of other Frank Herbertian topics on the next episode of The Quest for the Bestest. Thank you guys for joining me on this one, talking about Licorice Pizza. PTA, next time, maybe make a film with... I'm running out of speed. I don't know. You know how to write a film better than I do.
Don't try and give PTA advice. Thanks for
PTA
watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Peace.